His horn went beep, beep, beep.
Hello and welcome to Automotive Wisconsin. I'm your host, Victor Jacobo. Today we will be looking back at the life of two of the biggest car companies based in the state of Wisconsin, Kissel, made in Hartford, and Nash, made in Kenosha. These cars were sold around the country and even around the world. However, Kissel and Nash didn't just build cars, they provided opportunities. Between the two companies, thousands of jobs were created for people throughout the state, building parts for the cars that were manufactured in Wisconsin. They took pride in their craftsmanship and their constant drive to advance automotive technology. Their dedication and hard work still lives on, even today, at a school that bears the namesake of the man behind the Nash Motor Company. The children at Nash Elementary School are taught the same philosophy that Charles Nash himself taught his employees: kindness, respect, and hard work. And though the companies have faded into the pages of history, their spirit still lives on. Let's take a look back at the cars, lives, and legacies of two great Wisconsin companies, starting with Kissel. In 1906, Louis and his son George and William, after moving from Germany, decided they wanted to get into the automotive business. Though it was a rocky start, once they began, they spread like wildfire. Not only did they build cars, they built trucks, ambulances, and fire trucks. They even built trucks for the United States military during World War I. Many famous celebrities, including Amelia Earhart, even owned a Kissel. Hartford is now home to the Wisconsin Automotive Museum, which in itself features over 20 Kissel cars. We spoke with Dale Anderson, museum director and expert on all things Kissel, to learn more about the car company that made Hartford famous.
Well, the Kissel family came from Germany, and originally they settled near Big Cedar Lake. And after a few years of farming, they found out that there was a plow company, a farm plow company for sale in Hartford. And they came to Hartford and bought the plow company. Well, then as they were here making plows and other farm equipment, two of the sons were really interested in the family's white steamer car, and so they decided they'd like to build cars. The father of the two said that they were really too young to run a business because they wanted to go into business, and so he had Otto Kissel, who was an older brother, working there, and to get more money for the project, they got money from a H.K. Butterfield that was a circuit court judge, federal judge. And so actually the first president of Kissel was Butterfield. And later on, Butterfield decided to go where it was warmer. He went to California. And then George Kissel, the younger of the two brothers, took over. Bill Kissel then became the secretary-treasurer of the operation. One of the problems they had is they didn't really have an engineer. And one of the guys that worked in the factory said, well, you know, this guy Herman Palmer down the road in the factory, he was an engineer educated in Germany. So they talked to him, and so the first drawings that were made, since they did not have a regular drafting office, drew pictures on the floor, and that's how they got some of their designs. But they started out building, you know, the first 100, and then after that they just kept going. Most of the cars in their time, people or companies bought parts from the outside and just put them together and called it their car. Kissel, however, everything they built was custom. They built their own frames. They had their own foundries, so they made most of their foundry parts. They did pretty much everything there. The paint jobs were hand rubbed, up to 16 coats depending upon the car and the model, using this famous brand new product called Duco paint, a D-U-C-O. Anyhow, they were quite active in talking about their custom built cars. Very few cars out of the 2,600 car companies in those days were this carefully hand-built. Kissel made lots of different models, and probably the most famous model car that they built was nicknamed the Gold Bug. Now that was a speedster, was a two-passenger car, and these are some of the cars that some of the famous people would buy. What was interesting about the name is that a man named Brownie, who was a writer for a Milwaukee newspaper, used to travel every summer around the state of Wisconsin, and he would borrow a car. And one year he borrowed a yellow and black speedster. Well, he liked the car so much that he had a contest to name the car. And at the end of the contest, the name that was adopted was the Gold Bug. The Gold Bug was quite a car, still is, and the only time it's really a Gold Bug is if it's painted yellow and black. If it's green and cream or any other color, it's not called a Gold Bug. And then any other car that, like we've got a 1926 Kissel convertible coupe, and that's painted yellow and black, just like a Gold Bug would be. And sometimes when they restore cars, that's what they do. If they've got a similar car to a speedster, they try to make it a Gold Bug, which technically it's not, but technically a Gold Bug is not a real name either. So, the factory called it a speedster, and that's what it was. Some of the famous people used to come to Hartford, and they would stay at the local hotel, which was on the corner of downtown on the corner, and they would stay at the hotel, and then they would walk over to the factory to watch their car being built. Amelia Earhart, she even writes about it in her autobiography, and she called it her Yellow Peril. We didn't particularly like that name, but evidently she took care of her cars not real well. Their best years are probably in the 20s, and the highest number of cars are built in the 20s. The most cars collected that are still around are from the 20s because they built the most of them. Here in the museum, we've got, right now, I think we've got 22 Kissels. The Kissel company had several logos, and the company name was actually Kissel Motor Car Company, and their cars were called Kissel Car, both with K's. And this went on for quite some time. They put it on their radiators, they put them on their hubcaps, and the First World War came along, and Kissel Car, with the German spelling of car, was not readily accepted because of the war and the anti-German sentiment. So they dropped the word K-A-R, and then they switched over to just plain Kissel. And they adopted the god Mercury as part of their radiator emblem, and part of their wheel covers were, had just Kissel on them. In much later years, they were pretty much out of business. They only made 268 vehicles in 1930, but they changed their logo again to the White Eagle. The idea was that this was a new name, and they changed their radiator style, and they changed some of the other styles of the car, mostly because they could buy this stuff rather than making these parts. They could buy them on the open market and just put it together. And so that's how they changed over to the White Eagle series. They sold them all over the country and all over the world. Some of the cars were sold through Cuba and into South America. Some of the cars that were sold through California and went to Australia, New Zealand, and some of the cars went to Malmo, Sweden, and Sweden distributed them into Germany, and Germany sent them into Russia. The Kissel, of course, I like a lot of them because they were not they weren't the cheap car. They were an expensive car. I like expensive cars. But they were made with dedicated people from the city of Hartford. And in fact, Kissel pretty much built the city of Hartford. They imported a lot of people to come in here to work on cars. They'd bring them out from Milwaukee, and they would teach them English, and they would teach them how to do different job functions. But it was just a darn good car. and it was a nice heavy one, and certainly very roomy. We have usually have 20-some Kissels here. Sometimes we have more than that. But if you really want to see them, you got to come to the museum. Where we've got Kissel and we've got Nash and we've got all kinds of cars. Now, as far as comparing today to back then, it's a lot easier and to drive today's cars. And you don't have hardly any of the same problems. You don't have valve troubles, you don't have tire troubles. There's just a lot of things that are far superior, even though people say, they all look the same. Well, yeah, but I can show you a 23, a 24, a 28, a Kissel, a Graham Page, and a Packard. They all look the same then too, just that people forget that.
During their 25 years of operation, the Kissel Motor Company produced over 35,000 cars. They were sold to many different countries, including Germany, birthplace of the Kissel family. Their most famous car was the Goldbug, which, as you know, got its name from a man referred to as Brownie. His real name was William Rowland, a writer for the Milwaukee Journal. During the early 1900s, roads were not built with cars in mind, and were not clearly marked, or paved for that matter. So each year, Brownie would borrow a different car and drive around the state, mapping out roads in different cities. At the time, it was just assumed to get from one city to another, you would simply take the train. But with Brownie's maps, you were now able to make that same trip in a car, or a Goldbug. Unfortunately, the Great Depression had a devastating impact on the company. 1931 was the last year that Kissel produced cars in Hartford. However, the Kissel Motor Car Company's past is preserved at the Wisconsin Automotive Museum. For more information, visit the website at wisconsinautomuseum.com. Kissel wasn't the only one that made cars in Wisconsin. Of course, there were others, but the largest was named after a man named Charles Nash. Born in 1864, Charles Nash, or Charlie, had a rough childhood. At the young age of 6, he was abandoned by his parents and was raised on a farm in Michigan. Charlie developed a keen sense of business at a young age. He later became supervisor of a company, and when he was 30, had an opportunity to drive an automobile concept for the first time. This is when Charlie's love for cars began. Eventually, he became GM of General Motors. At the time, the company was 2 steps away from bankruptcy. But with Charlie's strong business knowledge, he was able to transform the company into an incredibly profitable one. Unfortunately, for the second time in his life, he was abandoned. The same company that he helped regain strength ended up firing him. It was then he vowed never to work for anyone else besides himself. Though General Motors fired him, his passion for cars was stronger than ever. He wanted to build a car with his name on it. Almost immediately after being fired, he bought out the Jeffrey Motor Company and renamed it the Nash Motor Company. To learn more about Charles Nash, we talked with Vincent Ruffalo, collector and Nash enthusiast. We also talked with Marty Pitts, principal of Nash Elementary School, to see how the legacy of Nash lives on.
So Charlie Nash and his money people got here officially in July of 1916. Charlie was smart. He had brought with him a lot of talent from General Motors. So behind the scenes, he had been getting things ready, a new engine and things like that. So the Nash car finally did come out in 1918. The war was on, and France and England loved the Jeffrey Quad, which was a big truck. All 4 wheels were powered, and all 4 wheels would steer. And he was sending trucks out there like crazy. At one time, he was the largest producer of trucks in the world. Everything was rolling along until the middle 30s. Other car manufacturers were putting out entry-level cars, economy cars. So in 1934, Nash comes out with an entry-level car, and called it the Lafayette. What really makes Nash famous is the weather eye, where fresh air would come into the car, be filtered, warmed, and heat the car. And it really worked great. I mean, people would drive up and down Main Street, if they had a Nash, with their coats off. And and the windows would get steamed up because you kept bringing in that fresh air. Every heating system in every car today has some design from that heater that began here in Kenosha, all the weather eye. Then in 41, before anybody else, they came out with the unibody, where the frame is the integral part of the car, and the car then would have crumple zones. And he called it a 600. Why? Because it had a 20-gallon gas tank, and you got 30 miles a gallon. It came out in 1950 with a Rambler. Now, the Rambler was what we call today a compact car. But not cheap. It was no cheapie. It had a custom upholstery, all the custom stuff that a custom car would have. It was a hit. Soon they had a little hardtop. That became a hit. Then they had a wagon. That became a hit. Then they were making little sedan delivery trucks out of that little Rambler. That was a hit. And they just kept making them until 1959, when we were in one form or other. But they were the first ones. That's the important part. They were the first ones to put a compact car on the road. I guess in April of 54, it was 54, but April, they did Hudson and Nash. Merged, I guess, was the word then. And they called it American Motors. So even though there were Nashes being made, 54, 5, 56, 57, they had a Nash emblem, but they were made by American Motors. 57 is the last year they made Nash, and they were really handsome cars. The two-door hardtop was outstanding. You know, he didn't cheapen it. Charlie wouldn't do that. You know, he'd say, if my name's on it, it's going to be right. And he, with the improvements, the changes that he made, and he projected that he knew what he was doing. He projected confidence. And he projected that he was smart. So it wasn't long before people began to realize that Nash was a good car to have.
My name's Marty Pitts, and I'm the principal of Nash Elementary School. I was lucky enough to open this school in the fall of 2007. Well, Kenosha has a rich tradition in the automotive industry. And really it began with Charles Nash. And there are a number of students here, staff members, who have family members in their history that worked for Nash Corporation. And that's where they earned bread that fed the family. And today those same families have students that are attending our school. Charles Nash, the story of Charles W. Nash is really an inspirational story of a child that was abandoned by his parents at the age of 6. And it was only through his own initiative and perseverance that he was able to rise to the level of prominence that he was ultimately able to enjoy. And what I've learned about Charles Nash is that he never really forgot his humble beginnings and treated the people that were on the line in the same way that he would treat his executives. He had a deep respect for the people that worked for his corporation, and he took great pride in providing them with a quality of life that was something that was great. From the time that we began designing Nash Elementary School, we had the objective of incorporating into the physical structure of the building reminders of Charles W. Nash and Nash Corporation. So for example, the color scheme that you see throughout our building is comprised of colors that were taken directly from a Nash car color chart from the 1950s. So you'll see those reds, those soft greens, the kind of turquoise blues, those retro colors that have been incorporated into the color scheme of our school. In addition to that, you'll see a Nash car emblem that's actually built into the tiles on the floor in our main entrance. Outside, there's also Nash emblems. It's not hard for anyone who enters our building for the first time to see very clearly who this school was named after and what it represents. And we all know that it's only through hard work that we're able to achieve to our potential, and really that was something that Charles Nash stressed to a great deal. He took great pride in their product, and he emphasized hard work and cooperation, and that's really what Nash School has been all about since we opened our doors. Kindness, respect, and hard work are the principles that really reign among the members of our Nash School family.
From the Rambler to the Ambassador, Nash built cars for all walks of life. They built luxury cars, sports cars, and compact cars, all with the dedicated workers from Kenosha. Nash built cars with technology that was ahead of its time. For example, Nash built a car nicknamed the Tub. It got the nickname because it looked like an upside-down bathtub. But it wasn't the looks Nash was concerned with. They were trying to make their cars more aerodynamic. They used a wind tunnel to test cars' aerodynamics, covered up the front wheel wells, and gave the body a sleek, curved design. This and the heating system they developed were just a few of the things the Nash Automotive Company came up with before anyone else. As you can see, the automotive history of Wisconsin had a deep impact not only on our state, but also around the world. Building cars for famous actors, pushing the envelope by creating technology that hadn't been invented yet, and building a rich tradition that a citizen of the state of Wisconsin can be proud of. When you look back at the cars of old, we remember the people that built them. Though the cars they built may deteriorate, their legacy lives on. The philosophy of kindness, respect, and hard work is passed on to the kids at Nash Elementary School. Their legacy even lives on in a song. We leave you with that song about the Nash Rambler. The song describes a Cadillac that is being approached by a Nash Rambler. The Cadillac quickly tries to speed up, but the Nash inevitably catches up with the Cadillac, and the driver asks, "How do you get this car out of second gear?" Once again, I'm your host, Victor Jacobo, and thank you for watching Automotive Wisconsin.
While riding in my Cadillac, what to my surprise, a little Nash Rambler was following me about 1/3 my size. The guy must have wanted to pass me out as he kept on tooting his horn. I'll show him that a Cadillac is not